Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Groover. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I am Kathy Groover, and we are going to talk today about gratitude, about staying present, and about changing your perspective so that you're seeing that proverbial glass half full as opposed to that glass half empty. Because we all have our moments where we're like, I don't have this, I don't have that. And I think it's important to shift so that we look at those things we do have, those things that are coming to us, because what we expect, we're going to get. So if we program lack and dis-ease and those things that we don't have, we're going to get more of those things we don't want.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's always a good exercise to go through. We'll try to, share a few stories maybe and talk about some different things that we can do, because I think, like you said, Kathy, a lot of times we almost beat ourselves up, and it's like, I mean, if you use the Brene Brown, kind of analogy of fighting in the ring, and getting your ass kicked, and you keep getting up and getting up and getting up. And it's like, we have a hard enough time with the world trying to beat you down and fighting against the world that we don't need to be also fighting with ourselves, right?
Right.
It's almost like I remember that, I think it was Liar, Liar, the movie with Jim Carrey, right? Where he goes, there's a scene in the bathroom where he goes in and he's beating himself up because he doesn't want to go into court because he knows he can't lie. And so he's going to lose, right? And that person walks in and they see him like punching himself and everything else. And they're like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm kicking my own ass, and it's like, how many times do we actually do that to ourselves when really it's kind of, not necessary. And if we stop and, like you said, pause and are grateful for and think about what we do have, we're actually going to really be surprised, because there's a lot of really good things that are happening. We need to be focusing more on those if we want more of those things to happen.
Yeah, we have so much negative self-talk, and I've coached and done hypnosis on so many clients who I say, my important question to them and everybody is, what do you want? And I said, what do you want? Oh, I don't want to be lonely anymore. Okay, what do you want? I don't want to feel guilty. I don't want, and we're so great at identifying what we don't want, but all we're doing is we're going to get more of that thing. So what do you want? And I think that's one of the most important things to focus on, is those positives of that. What is that outcome that you're moving towards? Because one of the things our brain does is it looks for things that are going wrong. It's there to protect us. We are programmed and wired so that we respond to negatively valenced things quicker than positive. So if you're about to cross the street and I scream no, your brain actually reacts to that quicker than if I said yes or hi or nice purse. That's just how we're wired. So we're going to be looking for those negative things in the environment anyway, and then add in stress and self-talk, self-talk, sure, but that influence from the parents, the teachers, the doctors, all of those things we heard as a kid still bounce around our head. And I can still occasionally hear my mother's voice go, see, God's punishing you. Still not sure what I did, but apparently I'd stubbed my toe and God was punishing me. And I'm like, what, for walking across the floor? Why am I being punished for, but she was sure there was some like cosmic connection, and that anything that happened wrong or bad was this guy in the sky punishing me because he had nothing better to do, I guess, than break a 12-year-old's toe, which I think is kind of cruel. But we have those voices that rattle around our heads, and sometimes they're self-talk, and sometimes it's that message that we got from someone in our past. And so we have to shift that perspective and look to those things that we do have that are good, and what do we want moving forward? What do we want, not what we don't want? Right.
Well, and I think, again, because some of this stuff comes back too to some of the stress that we're feeling, right? And so again, right, stress is I'm gonna try to get the definition right this time, because I always screw it up slightly, right? But it's our perception that our current resources are not enough to deal with whatever the situation is that we see in front of us, right? And so I think this is great. I heard this from one of my friends on her podcast, where she was talking about a client, and this client was again, it's kind of that negative self-talk, talking about all these things that she hasn't accomplished this year. Right. And so you could see this stress and anxiety and everything going on with this woman. And what my friend said is, pull out a clean sheet of paper, and we're going to do a little exercise. And so I think this is a great exercise. I know I don't do this enough. And so one of the reasons why I kind of want to talk about this today is probably to kick myself in the butt to actually do it a little bit more too.
Mm-hmm.
But, so she had to pull out this sheet of paper and say, okay, for the next 15 minutes, I just want you to write down all the things you did accomplish this year.
Mm-hmm.
And her first thing was, oh, I didn't accomplish anything, right? Look at all these things I have to do, because we're still doing that negative self-talk. Well, by the end of the 15 minutes, she had a full legal size piece of paper
Mm-hmm.
written out with all of the stuff that she had accomplished, right? And her demeanor totally changed.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like, if we're feeling that stress, like, well, I've got all these things ahead of me to do. It's like, well, stop, do a timeout, look at what you have accomplished already.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all the stuff you got done this last year. Don't you think you can also do that in the forward year? And it's like, oh yeah, right. And it just totally kind of changes people's perspective.
Yeah, we forget how far we've come. And when I'm working with pain clients, either in massage or hypnosis, I always make sure I ask them, on that scale of 1 to 10, what is your pain? And I was working with a gal doing some massage on her, and it was so bad. Her back pain was so bad that she could not walk 5 minutes through the grocery store without having to stop and lean on the cart for like 5 or 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine how just going to Trader Joe's was a nightmare for her. She had to park close. If she couldn't park close, that was a nightmare. And after a couple of weeks of doing the massage, I said, how are you doing? She goes, I don't think I'm getting any better. I mean, I was out playing basketball with my kids and I could only do that for about 15 minutes. And I went,
I don't think I could play basketball for 15 minutes
right
now.
Seriously. And I said, wait. Nah. I said, do you remember when you came to me, you couldn't walk 5 minutes through the grocery store you couldn't stand in the shower to take a full shower without having to sit down. And she went, oh my God. I mean, she didn't realize, because she was still in pain, but she didn't realize how much more productive she could be. That's the one point I was going to make, is we forget how far we've come. This is why I make to-do lists, and I always cross stuff off my list. And if I do something that's not on my list, I write it down to cross it off. I want credit for that. Uh-huh. And the other thing is, my friend Richard, who we're going to have on a future episode, did an entire podcast about making the bed.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, why? Well, he's a Virgo, so that's part of it. But one of the things he said, he had been in the military, and one of the things he said was, if you wake up and the first thing you do is make your bed well, you've accomplished something. Yeah. You start your day with that feeling of, I just did that thing well, I just did that thing right. And it's like, yeah, he actually kind of has a point. If that's the first thing you do is, I just did that thing, then it does sort of set up your day to accomplish everything else.
Yeah, well, and I think it's, the point that you brought up of it's normal. It's normal for us to believe that we haven't really accomplished very much, because the reality is we see ourselves every day. And so those little incremental changes that we make mm-hmm. every day, we don't necessarily see as much, right? Yep. Again, unless we stop and pause and kind of take a look at it. And so, again, you can think about this. I've noticed this a lot with, I have lots of nieces and nephews, mm-hmm. because my siblings are very prolific, and now grandkids, and there's just lots of kids when my whole family gets together, right? And because I don't see those kids but every few years, right? I just remember we were just, excuse me, we just saw my brother and some of his kids, and I remember, one of my brother's grandkids, I totally did not even recognize her. And this was like 2 or 3 years later. It's like, that's the girl, that's this girl, because I hadn't seen her in 2 or 3 years, mm-hmm. right? The progress that she made in 2 or 3 years in growing, right? This is physical growing, was totally mind-blowing to me. Mm-hmm. But we have to stop and realize it's the same thing with us emotionally and spiritually and everything else, is that, if somebody hasn't seen us for a few years, they're probably going to recognize that. And we need to give ourselves that same credit more frequently. If we go, a couple of years without getting any positive feedback or think that we're making any progress, we're going to continue to have those negative feelings, like we're just not really accomplishing everything, when in reality, we're accomplishing so much.
Yeah. Well, and it's so easy to focus on those things you've not done yet, those things that you don't have yet, those because we're wired to, again, look for those things that are wrong and look for that lack so that we can fill it. I mean, there are days too where I get up in the morning and I sit at the computer and go, oh my God, there's so much stuff to do. I mean, like I could work 24/7 and never get through the things that I should be doing, could be doing to move my business forward. You know, at some point we have to look again at what we have done. I bumped into someone the other day and they looked at me and they went, oh my God, your hair is so long. And I'm like, what? Because I used to have a hair like down to here and it's not, I can't let it grow that long anymore. I'm at an age where it's too fine, it's too thin. It looks terrible if I let it get kind of past here. But I look at pictures of myself when my hair was up to here and yeah, it is longer, you know? So it's like, it's about perspective. It's about shifting that perspective. Could it be longer? Yes. Has it been shorter? Yes. What do we want to look at? You know, what view do we want to take?
Well,
a weird analogy, but you know.
no, because perspective is it's a very interesting thing, right? I mean, I like to say there's always two sides to every story, at least. There's even way more than that. And the difference is it's just a difference in perspective, right? And so again, I mean, you can even kind of play games with yourself, you know, okay, I'm a little weird, right? But some of the stuff, even like of closing one eye, closing the other eye.
Yeah.
Totally different perspective, right? I'm still sitting here, but if all of a sudden I look with one eye versus the other eye, I see the world differently, right? Or if you get up and walk around, you see things differently. As a teenager, I used to lay on the floor.
Yes.
Did you do this too? Okay.
Yes.
I would lay on the floor and I would just look at the ceiling and I would pretend like I was walking on the ceiling. Okay. And so like I'm stepping over, you know, the doors, you know, because they've got the headers and everything on it. But it's again, it's just a totally different perspective, and there's no right or wrong perspective necessarily. So pick the one that works for you, right?
Yeah. Pick the one that's going to move you forward, because we can look at things from any number of ways. And we can put ourselves in those different sort of inner characters of, you know, I've got inner critic Kathy, and I've got compassionate Kathy, and I've got little kid Kathy, and I've got go-getter, go for it Kathy. You know, which one of those aspects can I pull out in that moment to either give myself a break, because I don't think we do that enough, or that's going to help me move forward in a way that's going to best serve the whole me. Because we all have these different aspects of our personality, and that's an exercise that I used to do. Is I would sit down and write all these different parts of myself, and I would name them and what task they were good for. And I recommend people who are very big introverts do this. It's like, find that one time that you spoke your mind, that you met that new person, that you were able to be a little bit bigger. Name her, put her in front of you, and then when you're going to that mixer, step into that Annie extrovert or whatever it is. Tap into those aspects of ourselves, because we all have different. I'm very different around my parents than around my in-laws, than around my clients, than around a boyfriend, than around a girlfriend, that are, you know, I'm very different around those people. It's still me, but we pull our strengths out depending on what the situation is.
Well, it's almost like we can kind of tag team, right? You know, I mean, if you're doing tag team wrestling, right, it's like, all right, tag the next person, right? So go for it, Kathy. Hey, I'm getting ready to get up on the trapeze rig right now. Go for it, Kathy. Better be coming out, right?
Yeah.
Because if not, you're not going to go.
Right.
And each of those different sides of us, or personalities, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, personas that are in us, have a different reason and different meaning, right?
Yeah.
Ones that, you know, that are kind of the naysayer parts of us, you know, because like you said, I mean, it's we tend to think about the negative things more, because that's literally how our brain is programmed.
Right.
Your amygdala looks at the danger at a 3-to-1 ratio, 3-to-1,
Yeah.
right? And so again, obviously, as you're thinking about, as you're having these self-talk things, to realize, again, it's a game. Your brain is playing tricks on you. You know, if you've ever played those, you know, optical illusion games, what we see is not necessarily what is there.
Yeah.
And if we know that our brain is probably kind of playing a little trick on us, well, then play the trick back, right?
Yeah.
You know what it is. And so again, find that right persona to be able to help you get through whatever it is that you're dealing with. And gratitude and the self-talk is a big way of being able to do that.
Yeah. And we only see about 7 things at a time. We can only perceive 7 things that plus or minus 2 in our environment at one time. So of course, as soon as I bought my Mazda CX-5, oh my God, everybody and their mother was driving a Mazda CX-5. I had never noticed them until I had one, and it brought it into my perspective, because what we focus on is what we're going to see. So right now we're sitting here, we don't feel our clothes on ourselves. We probably don't feel the chair under our bums. We don't feel our shoes on our feet. We don't feel a hair on our head, a tongue in our mouth. But as soon as I start to talk about it, you can shift your perspective, and I can feel how my booty feels in this new chair, and I can feel the shirt on me, and I can feel the hair touching the back of my neck. We can feel those things once it's brought to our attention. And one of the, to throw kind of autism in here for a second, one of the beliefs with autism is that they feel all of that all the time. Could you imagine if you always felt your clothes on you, like very consciously, how distracting that would be? How do you focus in class if you're feeling all those things? Most of us don't have that issue. 7 plus or minus 2 is what we're focusing on. So what do you want to focus on? What do you want to see? What perspective do you want to take in your environment? And how is that going to work best for you, as opposed to being, completely self-defeating?
Well, and it's funny because we've as you were saying that, right? I mean, we've talked about stories before, and the whole fact that we tell ourselves stories, so we can choose to tell ourselves good stories, and the way that we would like it to turn out, or we can be negative about it. And we can tell ourselves a negative story. Right. And so again, this is where I tend to think of myself as a pretty positive person. I would rather tell myself a positive story, right, than something else. So here's like a simple, I was talking with my wife, Allie, the other day. We live close to the Long Beach airport. And so we get a lot of flight traffic over us. There's the airport on the one side. We actually have a military base not too far away from us, right? So we're kind of like in the middle of all these things. So we have helicopters and planes and other stuff going over our houses at different times. And a lot of times we'll have helicopters that just kind of circle around our area. And, especially when you look up and you see it's a police helicopter, okay, whether it's, LA Sheriff or Long Beach Police, you kind of think, I wonder what's going on, right? So we can go down the road of a lot of different stories, right? Like we can tell ourselves a story like, oh, there must be, somebody they're chasing, there's something going on, right? And then we can start working ourselves up. Or the story I like to tell myself about that is, we're right next to the airport. They're probably doing training, because I know they're based out of the Long Beach airport. So they're probably just doing some training. No big deal, right? Now, I could tell myself either one of those stories, but which one is going to make me feel better? The training one. So that's what I choose to believe. And I even said that, right? That's the story I choose to believe. Because that's what I want. Now, is either one of them right? I don't know. Does it really matter? Not really. So choose the story that you want to tell yourself. So it's the same thing like how we started to begin with, right? We can tell ourselves the story. Oh, look, I haven't accomplished anything this year. Well, if that's the story you're going to tell yourself, how do you think you're going to feel? Versus if you tell yourself the story, look at all of these things that I've done. I'm kicking ass and taking names, right? You're going to feel totally different depending on which story, through self-talk and some of these other things that you actually choose to use.
Yep. And I think 2 things that just spark that. So when I work with 911 dispatchers, one of the things that's so tough for them is they don't know how the story ends. They get that call of whatever tragedy is going on. They push it off to the police, the fire, the EMS, and then they don't know. They don't know if the kid drowned. They don't know if the woman got away from the rapist. They don't know if the gun killed the guy. They don't know if the kid drowned in the pool. They don't know all of these things. So they go home and they finish that story in their minds. And 9 times out of 10, they make it negative. And I've said, look, you don't know how this, make up whatever you want. Yes, the kid got out of the pool. The guy did not have the heart attack. The woman got away from the rapist. The gun missed the guy. Tell yourself whatever story is going to work for you. Because why not? Like you said, we can make up whatever story we're going to. So if you don't know the ending, make it up. And if it's a negative thing that happened to you, change the ending. You can change the ending of that memory. It's okay. The other thing that this reminded me of is filtering out those people around you that are being negative. I went home this past weekend and dealt with my dad's estate. And I was really upset about that. It was the house I grew up in. I thought this would be the last time I was going to see the house. it was really heartbreaking to me to give up my childhood home. And so I walked into a client and he said, "How you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm getting ready for this trip to Pittsburgh, and I don't really want to go." I said, "I have to do." Now, clearly in the way I was saying it, I was not like, "Yeah, I'm going to Pittsburgh." I was clearly not feeling good about this trip. I said, "Yeah, God, I'm going to deal with my dad's estate, and I'm not real happy about it." And he goes, "Yeah, that's going to be really hard." And I said,
"No, I'm trying to get out of this."
and I said, "Yeah, I know. You don't have to tell me that. I know it's going to be hard. This is why I said I don't want to go. I'm already aware this is going to be a difficult thing for me. So I don't need you to tell me how hard it's going to be." And then he says this, double down: "I'd bring a lot of Kleenex." I was pissed. I looked at him, I said, "Why would you say that to me? We're going to stop talking now." "Okay, I guess I'll change the subject." And I'm thinking, why would you? His brain goes towards the negative. I have had clients when I told them my dad passed away who had the most negative responses for me because they live their life in terms of this negativity. I have one client who I know that for an hour, I'm going to hear nothing positive. Nothing. I can't make her say anything positive. I have said, what's something positive that happened today? She can't even do it. So I've almost, I hate to say, almost kind of given up because it is so much work to be around this woman. She's such a psychic vampire. She's such an energy sucker, but her existence is living in that negative soup. And I know I'm only around her 1 hour every month, and I have to gird my loins to handle that. But if you're around someone who's negative, if you're around someone who's giving you all that negative input, love them from a distance, try to get rid of them, or call them on it and say, "Look, I can't handle that conversation right now," whatever it is. You have to protect yourself. And unfortunately, the client that was like, "Bring Kleenex," I mean, he caught me at such a vulnerable moment. Other than go from here to here on a pissed level, I didn't know what else to do. It was such an insidious negativity that I had trouble shaking that for a while. I was pissed for a couple hours after that, honestly. But we need to separate ourselves from those negative people or say, "Don't say that to me." I mean, we're allowed to do that.
Yeah. Because again, I mean, there's nothing worse, I mean, and I'm guessing again, right? Most of the people that are listening to this, we're trying to be positive. We're trying to unlock our potential. And it can be difficult when others kind of bring you down, right? But again, you just have to kind of separate yourself from it and realize, you know what, it doesn't really matter what they're saying. I have control over what I'm going to say, what I'm going to think, and make the story what you want it to be.
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, ultimately it's the stories are going to work out the way that we want them to in the end, and usually it works out in a perfect way. And when it does, right, that's again when we need to be grateful for it. So one of the stories, because I was sharing kind of before we went on, I've wanted to get a bike again for a while. Okay, I used to ride bikes, and my last one, my son didn't lock up properly, and it got stolen a few years ago, right? So I haven't had a bike for a while, and I wanted to get another one. So I kind of set that intention that I wanted a bike. I started looking at some of them at REI, kind of found the one that I thought I wanted. And so I've been saving up for about a year and a half to get this, right? So this whole time I'm telling myself a story. I'm kind of manifesting and visualizing myself, getting this bike. And I'm working towards that, right? I'm making these small little steps. When I have a birthday or Christmas, people are like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Yeah, give me an REI gift card. I'm saving up for a bike." Nice. Okay. And so I've been going through this, and I had a whole big stack, right? And so in my mind, I had kind of the idea of what I was going to get. I kind of knew what the price was going to be. I kept adding up the gift cards every so often. It's like, oh, not quite. Don't have enough quite yet for what I wanted. And so finally, my birthday was a few months ago, had the last cards. So I was waiting to see what the sales were going to be, right? Because of course, right, no need to pay more than you need to.
Of course.
So they were having a sale, so we went down. And I ended up finding a bike that was actually a better bike than the one I had been visualizing. So this is where, again, right, sometimes people think as we're doing the visualization, it's like, I have to have this. No, I'm looking for this or better, right? So we got to add the or better on the end of it. So we end up going down there, find a bike. It's actually a brand of bike that I have dreamed about for 25 years, right? Okay. Someday I would love to have this brand of bike. So went down, it happened that brand of bike was on sale.
Oh,
The model that they had, it fit me perfectly. In fact, I got on, the seat was already adjusted exactly where it needed to be.
of course it was.
Of course it was, right? And it was on sale. Saved quite a bit of money from what I thought I was going to be paying. Got the other couple of things that I needed for checkout. Went over, started paying, pulled out my whole thing of gift cards and started handing them one at a time. Right? So poor guy at the checkout. And so, again, the total balance kept coming down, kept coming down, kept dumbing down, and it got down to less than $100. And I remember I was kind of giving him to him in the different denominations,
Mm-hmm.
and we got back down to the end, and he's like, I can't remember, $65 left, and I went, $65. Oh, I handed him another 25, another 25, and the last one I had was 15.
Oh.
And so it was like I walked out of the store with not paying anything for the bike. I mean, the gift cards exactly to the penny paid for my new bike that was better than what I'd been dreaming about and got me the other accessories and stuff that I wanted to get at that time, right? So I just had this sense of gratitude, at that point.
Yeah.
And it's like these are the kind of these things happen to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We just have to stop and recognize them when they come.
Yep.
Be grateful for them because things are manifesting themselves around us. And the more we can acknowledge it, be grateful for it, focus on it through self-talk, through, the stories that we're telling, the more these things are going to happen. Right.
Yes.
And so again, it was one of those, it was like totally blew my mind, right? Because I thought by the time I got done, I was going to still have to pay a couple $100.
Mm-hmm. But this story, I love that this story, because here's what this also illustrates: patience. Because other people would have gotten 2 gift cards and been like, "Oh, this is good enough," and you would have gotten the lesser bike with the different brand that, yeah, maybe it was the one you wanted, but now you got something even better because you had patience. I mean, how long did you collect those gift cards? Over a year?
Yeah, it was like a year and a half at least. Probably.
Right. Whereas most people wouldn't. I want the bike now. I mean, we're this not generation of now, but I mean, we kind of are. We are this country definitely of impatience and now an immediate gratification. Had you not had the patience to wait till you had all those gift cards, to wait for that sale, to wait for that bike that you didn't even expect because it was better than the one you had hoped for, that's beautiful. I love that. I'm so excited for you. Lock it up. Did you get a lock?
I had a lock. Well, I had a lock before, yeah,
Okay.
From my previous bike.
Yeah.
But I think also this kind of ties back into what we've been talking about, right? Is that we're making slow and steady progress along the way. We're just not giving ourselves credit for it, or we don't realize how far we've actually come. And just like the little bit of the gift cards that would kind of trickle in at different times during the year, it seemed like it was going to take me forever to get to that point. But those little things, and then kind of stopping every so often, assessing where we're at, and keep going, that before we know it, those little things turn into a big thing.
Yeah. In the negative and the positive.
Yeah. And yeah. But we're trying to focus on the positive, Kathy.
No, but what I'm saying, if you add up all those negative things, if you keep allowing these little negativities, it's eventually going to build up to this big. It's that little crack on the windshield. The rock hits your window, and you go, ugh. And then it gets a little bigger, and it gets a little bigger. I'll have to take care of that someday. And then one morning you come out and your entire windshield shattered because you didn't take care of the little thing. Yeah. So the opposite of you being patient and gathering the big things is take care of the little negative thing first and not let it build up. But I also have another tip for this. So can you think back, Jason, to a negative message that you were constantly getting in your childhood? Either a parent saying over and over again, or a coach, or somebody that said something negative that still gets you every once in a while. You could still hear that voice in your head.
Well, I mean, which one? Like, the money doesn't grow on trees. That's
sure.
One, I think every parent, that must be in the parenting manual or something.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know who wrote that, but it's terrible.
Yeah, it's I came from a working class family, right? And so again, it's like a lot of times it's with the bike as an example, right? I mean, as a little kid, I never thought I would have had that, right? And so sometimes too, it's like sometimes those little things kind of creep in, like, well, you don't really deserve it.
Right.
We're working class, we're, lower middle income, kind of thing. We get by with what we have, right? And you do without, and that's just kind of what it is, right? But over time, obviously we don't have to be that way.
No.
We can shed some of those things.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, because I work with clients specifically in hypnosis where they have this voice. They can hear their mother's voice. They can hear the coach's voice. I was working with a 13-year-old on soccer performance, and the coach, frankly, seemed kind of like an asshole. He was yelling at the girls. Okay, so to have an adult male coach yelling at these 12 to 14-year-old female soccer players, I think is vastly inappropriate. But one of the things he said was, faster, 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 you've got to play better. And it scared the crap out of this girl because you have this big guy yelling, faster, 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 you've got to play better. And I said, who's your favorite cartoon character? And she said, Mickey Mouse. And I said, okay, can you hear Mickey Mouse's voice in your head? She goes, oh, yeah. I said, okay, so the next time you hear the coach's voice, faster, 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 you have to play better. Can you turn that to a Mickey Mouse voice? I said, close your eyes.
Faster, faster.
Right. And she started giggling, as a 13-year-old girl should be.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And we did this little hypnosis thing. And I said, every time he yells, faster, 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 you've got to play better. Because that really just seemed to be his tagline. You're going to hear that as a Mickey Mouse voice. And it's actually going to make you happy. It's going to make you overjoyed. It's going to fill you with this glee. And you are going to run faster and you are going to play better, but it's going to have a positive result as opposed to a negative one. We can do this with previous abuses. We can do this with that overbearing parent. We can do with that, you're stupid, you're not good enough. You're stupid, you're not good enough. It makes it funny at that point. I don't know what the hell voice that was, but it just came out. Tapping into my inner, whatever the hell that was. But it's one of those things that we can reframe that stuff. And like we said, tell ourselves any story we want to, reframe that. And then the other thing I deal with a lot with people is inner child work, and actually sitting down with that hurt child and having a conversation with little Kathy or little Jason about how we can protect each other and how we can help each other. And I just had a coaching client write a letter to her little kid self. What would you want to tell this little 5-year-old that's scared and just abused? And, it's such a healing thing to either shift that voice so that it's funny or make them have a cartoon head or, it's like we could do, look, you're even laughing now.
No, I've got all these things going through my head right now.
I'm afraid of what that looks like. Right, yeah, we don't need to see what's in your head. But, but it's the same, it's like we can tell ourselves whatever story. So change it to a funny voice, change it to a cartoon head, put a funny hat on them. It's that whole picture the audience in their underwear thing, which doesn't help me because I'm a massage therapist. I see naked people all day. So that's, they're actually overdressed in their underwear. Whatevs. Yeah. So just a couple tips in there that you can do.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, again, it's slow and steady wins the race kind of thing. And again, if there's some of that negative self-talk that's going on in your head, probably it's been programmed there for many years. And so, the reality is, I know a lot of times people that try to do self-improvement work, they get frustrated after the first little bit, right? Because they're like, oh, it's been a week and I'm not seeing anything yet. It's like, you got to give it time, right? I mean, it takes 30 to 90 days for anything to start really kind of kicking in. And some of the things, it might take longer,
right?
But you've just got to be consistent. You've got to do those little things each and every day. Stop, pause, be grateful for where you have come already.
Yeah.
Because you've already come a lot further than you realize. And if you stop and acknowledge that and feel the gratitude for it, it's going to help to propel you and push you forward, again.
Yep.
And there's something about gratitude. That emotion has one of the longest and best effects on us as a human. It's one of there's actually like a whole scale of like how the emotions kind of fall into each other, like the better emotions. And anyway, it's clear up towards the top. Nice. In comparison, as far as like the energy that actually produces in your body. The feeling of gratitude is one of the best things that we can do energetically.
Yeah.
To help us move forward.
Nice. I love it. Well, I'm grateful for you.
And I'm grateful for you.
And I'm grateful for our listeners and and all that good stuff. And once again, we've blown through a half hour of time.
I know.
We're so good at that. We could just talk for hours. Yay. All right. Any final thoughts, Jason, before we send everyone off to be grateful?
No. Just pause, be grateful, and give yourself credit for where you've come. Because I know, I mean, I'm saying this, but I'm dealing with the same shit. Okay. And yeah, when I stop and realize where I have come in the last year or two. Yeah. Huge.
Yeah, I know. Excellent. All right, everybody, go forth, be grateful, shift that negative self-talk, make them sound like Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny.
Oh boy. I don't know which.
Was that Mickey Mouse? I don't know. Okay. Or whatever cartoon character you make up in your own head. That's fine too. Go forth. Love everybody. Love yourself most of all, because that's all we have. So I'm Kathy Groover. I can be reached at kathygroover.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. And we'll see you on a future episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.
See ya.